Hey guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to switch gears and try to create this section. So this is more of an about us section. And if this was a full website, then this left hand side would be having like an image, and then the right hand side would have this content. So let's see how we can create this using HTML and CSS. So as always, we also have a blank HTML template and a blank style.css file. And the very first thing we always do is to link the CSS to the HTML document. And then this is a section. We are going to create this section. We're going to call it about us. So we can create a section. We're going to use the section tag. The reason we use the section tag is to signify to web browsers, crawlers, Google bots that this is a section. There's a way when you're creating a website, you need to follow some site hierarchy and structure. So by using a section, you signify to the crawlers or the indexing bots that this is a section. And then inside the section, you always start with a heading level 2, because in a single page, we always need one heading level 1. And the heading level 1 is what that tells the browser what this website is all about. And then if you have some sections, inside the section, you start with the heading level 2. And inside those sections, if you have other headings, you go down and go to heading level 3. So this is called site structure. But let's now focus on creating this. So the heading is exciting outdoor activities we offer. So that's the heading. The next thing we need now, this is very simple. This section will be very simple because you can see it has repeating columns. You can see this card is the same. Only the only thing that changes here is this image or icon. So to get these exact icons that I do have, you can go to my GitHub repository, github.com/techwithTwin/tiktok-projects, and then look for about v1. This is it. Click on it, and then you'll see the assets folder, which has all those icons. So in my case, I'm just going to create that folder and say assets. Inside the assets, I'm going to drop all these assets. So all those assets, you can see now I have those assets. So the next thing we are going to do now is we are going to create just one card. We can call it a card or a section card. And then you're going to repeat it in all the other elements. So how you're going to do this, what I'm thinking is that we can give this a class of cards, and then inside we have multiple card elements. So we can say dot cards. Inside the dot cards, now we have the card itself. So we can say card. And then inside the card, we could do that, or we could also we could leave out this, because whenever you have the cards, we can always reach for the sibling div. So I'll show you how. So what we can do now is that we need an image. The first thing you're going to start with is kayaking. So we go to assets and then look for the kayaking SVG. All right. So after the image, then we have another section. We create a div. And while we are there, I'm thinking let's also add a class here of card. Let's not complicate our lives. So now we have the image and there another div that has the content. We can give it a class of content, but that is not mandatory. So what we can do now is to create a heading level 3. You can see how I'm going down with my headings. So I started with the heading level 2 and now I'm in heading level 3. And the reason is that this is a section inside a full website. So we don't need to have, we said that in each page in a website, we only need one heading level 1. Then you go like that. And then if I had another section below this section, I could still start with the heading level 2 with a section. If it was an article, are called semantic tags. So then kayaking, and then we have now the paragraph, which is this. So you can just copy this and paste it. So something else, let me go live with this project so that you can see our progress. This is what we have. So I'm going to copy this down, the card down 4 times. So this one is 2, 3, 4. And then the second card, we are not going to do kayaking. The second card, we are going to do climbing. We just copy the climbing, paste the climbing there. And then now here it's climbing.svg. And then the next one is hiking. So we just change this to hiking. And then here it is hiking. So just repeating these cards. And then finally, instead of kayaking, we have biking. We can change that to biking. And here we can say mountain biking. All right, and those are our cards. After the cards, we have the button. So we just create a button, and we say explore now. So that's all on our HTML, and then you can see these icons showing as we expect. So let's go now to the CSS, and we said in the CSS, the very first thing we always do in the CSS is to add the default CSS styles. So I'm going to select every element, remove all the margins, remove all the paddings, and add a box sizing of border box. We said the box sizing border box helps when you are dealing with margins and paddings, and you also have widths. So when you add a box sizing of border box, the paddings and the margins are all inclusive of the width. So if I say the width of this element is 200 pixels and I add a padding of 10 pixels, that will be calculated inside the 200 pixels. The next thing is to capture the body. And then we can say, let's add some padding. So the reason I'm adding a padding is because you can see these elements are too close to the edges. So we need to give some breathing room. And then you can see it. And then the next thing is to display this flex because we want to push this card inside in the middle. So we can say display flex, flex direction of column. No, we cannot do column. So we just do justify content center. All right, you can see it in the middle. And then the next thing we need to do now, we need 2 fonts. One of the fonts is called Playfair and the other one is called Outfit. So I'm just going to say Playfair. It's normally called Playfair Display. We get this font. And the next font I want, so I don't want. Okay, I think we can stick with this font. You can use either font you want. So I have Playfair Display and DM Sans. We can also use another font as you wish. So I'm just going to copy this link. And then here on top, just paste that in. Right, so we have added that. That's all we need there. So the next thing we need is to go to the body and say the font family. Font family is DM Sans. Then as a fallback, we have sans serif. All right, you can see the font looks nice. So the next thing, let's grab the about us wrapper or the section dot about. Then let's give it a width of something like 450 pixels. So that doesn't change too much. And then let's display it flex. And then flex direction of column and a gap of maybe 1 rem. So the reason I'm doing all this is because we have this heading and the card. So we are just displaying them flex, but that means you could either add more. So we have 3 elements. So we are displaying it flex, flex direction column, and then we are adding gaps between each element. All right, after grabbing that, let's now grab the heading level 2. So the heading level 2 is where you are going to add the new font family. So you're just going to say play here and as a fallback sans serif. So let's see, it's called so the font is not changing. Okay, so we need to give this a class of the section a class of about. So all right, so you can see the font looks as we expected. So let's increase some font size. So we can say font size. Then the font size should be 2 rem. That's nice. And then let's add some font weight of maybe 700. All right. So that makes sure it's bold. The next thing we need to work on is the cards. So the cards is what is holding all the other cards. So you can see if I open, it has multiple cards. So I can just grab the cards. So and say dot cards, then display grid. We have not done display grid in any of our tutorials. So the display grid is, we have two ways of laying out elements. We have like three ways. The first one is the flex box. The next one is grid. And the final one is floats. Floats is almost deprecated, but you can still use it. It works. Display flex is commonly used, and grid is used for complex, whenever you have complex grids. So in the cards, we are displaying it grid. By just doing display grid, nothing happens because we have not specified how many columns you want, how many rows you want. So grid template columns. So you specify the number of columns you need in your section. And which is the section? So we can say background color red. So how many sections do we want? So in grids, we normally divide the columns by fractions, by maybe you can also use percentage. You can also use what you want. So let's see if you use percentage, it will work. So you can say 50%, right? And then you can see it. So the red part is the grids section. So when we say that we want to split it 50%, 50%, it creates two columns, each with, so let me remove this. So when we do this, when we add a display grid, it just specify that now this section needs to be displayed grid. And then you specify the number of columns. And also you can add CSS grid media queries. And then you can change this number to maybe one grid. So if I say grid template columns 100%, so each column takes 100% width. So you have only one column. If we say 50%, 50%, so each column takes 50%. If we say 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, now each column takes 25%. But in our case, we can use 50%, 50%. So you can say 50%, 50%. If you don't want to work with 50%, 50%, you can divide that to fractions. So each column takes one fraction. All right. I hope now you got an understanding of grids. And then let's add some gaps between the elements. So we can say gap of 0.3, no 0.5. All right, so that looks nice. So the next thing is the card itself. The card, we want to display them flex as the final version. So we can just come here and say dot card display flex. You can see it that. And then let's add some gap of let's add some gap of 0.3 rem. That's nice. So it's the gap between this element and this. So the next thing, let's style this icon so that the icon can be justified in the start. So how we can do this is we grab the dot card, and then you can see it here. So we have the dot card, and then we grab the image. So you can say dot card and then the image. And then what we can do here is align self start, just like that. And then now, what else do we need? So the next thing we need to do now is to work on the div. So this is the section div. It's located at dot card and then direct child div. So you can just select it by saying dot card direct child div. We only have one direct child, so it will just help us. So we display it flex as well, flex direction of column and a gap of 0.2 rem. Right, so that looks a bit nice. So finally, let's work on the paragraph. Now let's work on this heading is too large. So it's still the card, direct child div, then heading level 3, font size 0.9 rem. All right, so that looks nice. Then let's style this text. So we just grab. So how I'm doing it is that we have the card div. Direct child is only one div. Direct div child is only one. In case you have two, it could select both of them, but we're now having one. And then inside that, we now select the paragraph or the heading. So you can say dot card div paragraph. And then font size, let's reduce it to 0.85 rem. Yeah, that looks nice. And then the next thing we need to work on is the color, be gray. And font size, S2 300. So it looks a bit nice. Let's change the font weight here to around 600. I think that looks a bit nice. So finally, let's style the button. So we can just grab the button. We only have one button. So we can say padding of 8 pixels, 12 pixels. So the 8 pixels is vertical, the 12 pixels is horizontal. And then let's give it a background color of hash FD4622. Let's give it a color of white. You can see the text. Then let's remove the ugly border radius. So we can say ugly borders. So we can say border none. And then we want it to fit its width. So we can say width fit content instead of 100%. And then the border radius is 15 pixels. All right, that's it, guys. That's how you can create this card. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends and comment something. So see you next. Thank you.